Adrian Smith and Gordon Gill are partners at Smith Gill Architects in Chicago, fresh from the completion or near completion of Burj Dubai and all of the attention that it's getting. And there's a lot of other things on your plate that we would like to talk about that's pretty exciting. Your presentation here was about the past, present, and future of the super tall tower, retrofitting existing icons and designing new ones, and one of your headline projects these days is the green retrofit of the Willis Tower, formerly the Sears Tower. Tell us about that, and what stage are you at with this?
Okay. We have been working on the Willis Tower now for about a year and a half. We started out working on the hotel. The client, the owner, came to us and said, we have these foundations underneath the plaza that would support what we think is a 15-story structure. Can you come in and take a look at them and see what would be what would possibly be built on that, and then also what is the zoning criteria for that? How much could you build on that? So we started to study that and found out that the structure could indeed support something between 11 stories and 15 stories, but that the zoning, the underlying zoning that the site had available would support something in the neighborhood of 30 to 35 stories. And by the time we were done with looking at all the other bonus considerations, we thought we could actually get up to about 500,000 square feet or 50 stories with a hotel. So we started to develop that idea, and while we were developing that idea, we somehow got involved in talking about the Sears Tower itself and what could be done with Sears Tower to bring it up to a certain Class A building again. And when we started, it was about 800,000 square feet of empty space out of 4 million. So it was a significant problem that they had. We first started talking about the glass, which was single glazed. And knowing that single glazing is not a very good material to keep heat in or out of the building, we suggested that they study the possibility for double glazing or even potential for double wall or triple glaze even. So we did a whole series of studies on the exterior wall. Double glazing had about was an 8 to 10 year payback, something like that.
Roughly.
If you just took out the glass that was there and put in new high performance glass, you could get about an 8 to 10 year payback. So that seemed to make some sense. And so we then started talking about a lot of other issues like green roofs, greening the roofs of Sears, and we mocked up a roof on the 69th floor of one of the roofs, and put a green roof in there, and it's been up there for now a little over a year. It's surviving beautifully. So we propose that we green roof all of the roofs except those that would be actually more that would actually be better for solar hot water. And so one of the 9 cubes becomes a solar hot water roof. And then we also looked at daylighting, and which goes along with the exterior wall a little bit. If you go do a high performance glass and you make it more transparent, you get better natural lighting in the office space, which then means that your light fixtures can be dimmable, and you can reduce a lot of power by using dimmable ballasts. And we studied Lutron lighting control systems, and we are proposing those, and that will take down a good quantity of power demand for the building as well. We started getting into the elevator systems, and the elevator systems have been retrofitted somewhat, but not extensively. So We proposed new digital controls for the systems, which right now are about 35 years old and take up a room about 30 feet by 30 feet. And we can do the digital control in a box about 2 feet by 2 feet. And it becomes much more energy efficient, and you can utilize that space for other uses as well. The whole building is about 35 years old, so the mechanical systems are reaching their useful life. So we talked about exchanging boilers for fuel cells, and doing some cogeneration, and changing out some of the chillers. And
yeah, I think the whole project, when it started, was kind of looking at a kind of rebirth of the building and how to reposition that building in a market where there were other buildings that were coming online that may be more attractive to tenants. When we first looked at it with the hotel, the notion was to have a zero energy hotel. So we were concentrating on the new building. As we did that, and we kind of tested the realities of that and what that would mean from an investment standpoint, we asked the question about the existing building. And we quickly found that at 9 or 10% of energy savings, which is a small amount, with that size of building at 4 million square feet, the quantity of energy saved was tremendous. In the end, I think we're about 68 million kilowatt hours per year, translated to 2,500 single-family homes every single year in terms of savings. So it's a very quantifiable, very real amount of energy that affords the new building, the new hotel, at about 500,000 square feet to come online with zero impact to the grid. As a matter of fact, I think the new hotel uses less than 50% of the energy saved. So the building becomes very attractive to users. It becomes a kind of new icon for sustainability and repositions itself as being an educator amongst existing building stock, and at the same time shows how you can use existing buildings to bring new buildings online with little or no impact to the grid. And I think that in of itself is a learning experience that we've now translated to the building and building relationship and the block by block relationships that you see in our decarbonization plan.
Is painting the building still on the table?
There is an option now for recladding the building completely, not just replacing the windows, but actually replacing the skin as well. The skin is not insulated well, so if we were to reclad the entire building, we could get a much higher performance with newer insulation in areas we can't reach right now.
Would painting the building, cladding is obviously more preferable to painting, I would think.
If we replace the building cladding, then we would use a factory-coated system, which means that we could, do we need to stay with a black building, or is it better to go to, say, a silver building? And we've studied the issue of heat gain and heat loss, and it's about neutral. So yeah. The black building absorbs the heat in the wintertime, which helps us in the winter, but it also absorbs the heat in the summertime, which hurts us. The silver building would do the opposite. The silver building, though, does reflect light into the streets and in the surrounding context, which might help the brightness of the street around the city.
Well, when I heard paint, I'm thinking, gee, doesn't that have to be repainted every so many years?
Well, it would be a fluoropolymer coating, and it would have to be a very sophisticated painting system to do that. It's not just your normal house paint.
But cladding is the preferable option.
Cladding would be the building itself is painted.
Okay.
Sears is a painted building, so painting it every 30 years is not so bad.
Has it been repainted since it was built?
No, I don't believe so. I think the only place that's been repainted is the first 2 floors. Yeah. Which really don't match the rest of the building, actually. So it's kind of,
I think it would have surprised a lot of people, because Sears Tower has had occupancy issues for a while, to learn that another building is being built on that site. What changes are going to happen in Sears Tower that make that
Well,
practical?
Actually, it's interesting that you bring that up. Since the tenants have understood that the hotel is in the possible mix on that site, they have leased up to 90% of where, I mean, the building is 90% leased now. It was, 75% leased before they knew. So it hasn't affected in a negative way the leasing of Sears.
And if anything, it's made it more popular.
Made it more popular.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which should be. I mean, you know, a hotel office mix
Yeah.
is a great mix. They're mutually supportive of each other. You get a lot of synergy between the two.
Also, it's an impact on the entire West Loop. So, you know, to introduce a program, a hotel program over on that side of the city, against the river, attached to Sears, there's a real kind of logical relationship between day use and night use, and activating that entire block by the owners envisioning a hotel. So I think it's very attractive. And we should also mention that the design is not just about the buildings. You know, the entire plaza level has been relooked at, much more accessible. You know, landscaping features, technology walls or information walls have been integrated into the north face of the base, the granite base. So there's a real understanding of the social impact of programming for retail and everything else on that block that I think would just go along and making it much more attractive to everyone.
Much
Sears-
better,
not
much
just
better
the
retail
users.
storefronts on the existing buildings as well. And the hotel would open itself up to the outside from a point of view of the pedestrian level.
And it has beautifully
and also we
landscaped
have
terraces.
a series of exterior winter gardens or sky gardens that are going up into the building itself.
Sears has, over the years, historically, speaking about the past,
Willis.
not, speaking about the past, historically has not had the reputation of being the friendliest building. And I know that there have been a lot of adjustments over the years at street level where the building meets the ground just to try and, there's been changes over the years and a number of them. And what you're proposing here, obviously with an eye on making that a little bit more approachable and a little bit more
Yes.
usable, but long-term a lot more friendly. Is that going to be building-wide? Is that something you've thought about?
Yes, it is. I think we have identified, and the owners have identified Sears as a strong tourist attraction. It does have well over 1 million people a year going to the top of Sears for the observatory, and they've recently done a couple of things to the observatory with the windows that move outside, all glass boxes that you can stand in and they move outside, you can look straight down, you know, which increase or enhance the entertainment value of the observation decks. So that's becoming a fairly popular thing. And we think that Sears, along with the hotel, reinvigorates the West Loop, actually gives it a new center of gravity. You know, I think all of those issues, we're having a learning center in the lobby for, you know, how to engage the community.
Yeah, I think that's
about learning about sustainability and
Yeah.
all
The
the
educational
incremental
component.
aspects that we're doing.
The educational component is a big
Yeah.
deal. You know, that building, for one reason or another, has always had people from all over the world come to it to visit it. So I think now when they look at the kind of community programming that goes on in the base of the building for schools and not just for tourists, that there's a real I think there's a real understanding of the role that building can play from a sustainable standpoint and how it educates students and other building owners about how to manage, you know, their existing stock and how it can be revitalized in order to be competitive and in fact a leader. That building will be probably the most energy efficient building in the city, including those that are newer or that are just coming online. So that's quite a big statement for a building.
Not only energy
75
efficient, it'll probably be one of the more sophisticated buildings in the city in terms of controls and operations.
Is it, was there a particular challenge with kind of recasting, recharacterizing this building with the very large floor plates that you have, up to 45?
There were discussions about introducing atriums into the floors, or taking out 2 or 3 floors in a module to create extra high spaces. That's something that they have studied. We didn't do that study, but something that the owners have studied and are in a position to offer potential tenants in the building. If they want to have that kind of feature in their building, they could. It would help some of them, give some of them a little more individual identity within the overall complex of Sears. They've talked about, instead of having just a 9-foot acoustical tile ceiling with light fixtures, they've talked about doing coffered ceilings, which give you taller ceiling spaces and bring light back into the deeper areas of the building itself, natural light. That's on the table as a marketing tool as well. But I think that the overall aspect of the complex of the 2 buildings, with an enlivened street level for retail, and the kind of amenities that the hotel can bring to the office building, create a new center of gravity for the West Loop in a very unique and elegant way, without actually adding 1 watt to the grid, to the existing energy grid. And I think that has a lot of legs to it. We're using it now as a prototype for looking at other buildings in the city that were built in that era that have similar problems, and we see those as buildings in need of a similar approach.
Does Sears Tower or Willis Tower offer to that part of town, and I imagine that it would, the same kind of magnet, the same kind of amenities, the same kind of more charismatic presence that you find surrounding some of the newer towers, say in China, where they're really a lot more people-centric and there's a little bit more of a buzz around them, maybe perhaps because they're new, but is that going to be the case here?
I believe so. I think that that there'll be a very strong buzz, not just initially, but a long-term buzz in terms of what's happening there. It effectively turns that section of the city and that block in particular into a 24-hour scene, whereas right now it's 12 hours.
Yeah.
You know, it just shuts down at 6.
Yeah.
And so that's a very important part of the city as well. We think that in order to further enhance the livability of the central city of Chicago, that central area, it's important to continue to draw residences back into the central core of the city, and to get a much stronger mix of residential and office uses. Right now it's 80 to 90% office, it's maybe 5 to 10% residential, and then there's some institutional thrown in. We'd like to see it more 50-50 throughout.
I'd like to move on to just a mention of the Burj Dubai. This is a fabulous new building that has far surpassed the previous world's tallest record holder by a substantial margin, to say the least, and this puts you really literally head and shoulders above other people right now, because other firms right now, because you have this project under your belt, and you're speaking of it in past tense, whereas other people are kind of looking forward to what they're going to do. So I'm wondering if the phone is ringing a little more in your office, because there are so many projects, a multitude of projects out there that, you know, the word kilometer is being used.
Yeah.
And you have these building retrofits as one area of new business, and these extremely super tall buildings as another area. I mean, correct? Are you still getting inquiries about those?
Yes, we are. Actually, super tall is a passion of ours. And Burj Dubai was a wonderful opportunity to design the world's tallest building for Emaar, which was a wonderful company, while I was at SOM. And we're still involved in Burj Dubai on our own. And we have been in competitions recently for buildings of a similar height or even higher that we hope to win and procure those competitions like we did on Burj Dubai. And so it's a stiff competition, but there really only are about 5 companies who have built buildings over 100 stories. And we know who that competition is, and so far we've done pretty well against them. So our passion is being fed by these competitions, and they don't come along every day. Usually, typically a super tall building of over 100 stories comes once or twice a decade. You would think it's a lot more when you see all the images of all the buildings being shown, but not many of them actually get built. 1 to 2 per decade is typically what happens, and it has happened ever since the 30s.
Well, we have more than 1 or 2 kilometer tall buildings being talked about now seriously,
Yeah.
And going to design, and some being contracted. How many of these do you think will become reality? All of them? Well, I mean, there's all of them. There's some
I don't
of them,
know
but
of any kilometer tall buildings right now that will become reality.
even though they're pushing dirt and.
Nah, they're not pushing dirt. I mean,
Okay.
yeah. Which one is
Like,
pushing
for
dirt?
example,
Yeah.
Oh, let's see here. The Gill Tower, or
Which one?
the Nikhil Tower.
Nikhil.
That's not. Wait, that's not a
dead.
kilometer. Okay, never
Well,
mind.
it
sorry.
was, but it's dead.
Okay.
Totally dead. No financing.
Okay.
No need.
I'd like to talk about some of the things on your plate right now, post Burj Dubai, and I'll just tick off some of these project names, and if you would just tell me a little about them and why they're important. In Jeddah, the Kingdom Tower, which you're one of 2 companies shortlisted now for designing that one. What's the rough height figure on that one, and what is this project?
I think the height, the total height is a secret, but most likely they will go taller than Burj. So it is a project that would be the new world's tallest, if it happens. I mean, it's been a long 6 months of competition. Previous to that, Kingdom Tower had a lot of false starts. They've been around for 2 or 3 years with different false starts. They started out at a mile. They got a certain way and found out that was not feasible. They went down to a half a mile, or actually a little more than a kilometer. That wasn't efficient either. So the owner of that wants a building that will make money for him, not just be a landmark for Saudi Arabia and an icon for himself. He really does want to make money on it. So the competition is as much design and it's economically based as well. He's not just us. He's having competitions between contractors who are giving him guaranteed maximum prices for the 2 schemes. So we'll see. We don't know. We don't know if it's going to be the lowest cost scheme that gets it, or the highest revenue producing that gets it, or some combination.
One Dubai is the name of the building in Dubai, which is a very unique 3-pronged approach. Describe this project, and again, is this on the order of a kilometer, this particular one? On the order of?
That building was also a subject of a competition. We did it about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, 18 months or so.
We won the competition against the same people we
Same
competed
group.
against before. And we started out with a 750-meter tower, 3 towers, interconnected by sky bridges. And it grew to about 850. And then we had a meeting with Sheikh Mohammed, and he whispered to me, "Can we make it taller?" So we went up to a kilometer, and we've developed that building to the point where we have a full set of schematic design on the building, and it's ready to go. We actually started laying out. We have all the basements done. The structure for the basements are done. They could start digging on that. The problem is it's in Dubai, and Dubai right now has about a 10-year supply of residential waiting to get filled up. So to put another 10 million square feet of space on the market today would really not serve much of a purpose. So we think that's a ways off, unfortunately.
These are two super tall, for lack of a better term, competitions that you've been in, and winning these. Are there differentiating factors that you find, without necessarily telling me all your trade secrets, that set you apart from everyone else, aside from the fact that you've already done something like this? Or is it different for each project?
Well, I think experience is a key factor in approaching the issues that have to be dealt with in super tall buildings. It's not just a sketch. It's not a napkin sketch. It's not just a pretty building. There's a real science to building a building of 800 meters or more. A real science. It's not like building a 60-story building. It's completely different. It's like a housing architect doing a hospital. You know, just completely different night and day. So the common problem is that a client will hire an architect who has no knowledge of what it takes to do one of these. And they'll do a design of the building that is a piece of sculpture, and without a strong basis for what the real key issues are. And those key issues are primarily wind forces. You know, wind forces, floor areas, floor sizes, but the wind forces are the key issue, because if you don't have the wind designed properly, the building will move too much, and it won't be comfortable to be in. You know, people get seasick.
I just wanted to run through a couple of other projects on the list here that you're working on. Just a brief comment on each of these. You've got a couple projects going on, one in Qatar at 104 floors, the Abu Dhabi Tower. Describe the project and briefly tell us about the building.
The Abu Dhabi Tower is on the Corniche in Qatar. It's 104 stories. It's mixed use. It has office, hotel, and residential. It is finished with its concept. And there are two different landowners involved in actually getting the building off the ground. So in part, the two different landowners are negotiating with each other. In other aspects of it, the financial crisis in the Middle East hasn't helped the situation there a great deal, but we know this is a real client, and it has been on hold for about a year, and they've talked to us about starting up again fairly soon. So that's pretty interesting. It has an exterior wall that is very solar specific. The orientation of the glass elements and the photovoltaics on each unit are designed specific for its specific location as it relates to the sun. It has wind channels in the building that help to vent the tower, so that in the heavy winds, these wind vents keep the building from shedding the vortices and reducing the amount of oscillation. So that's an interesting and intriguing new solution to that problem. Otherwise, the tower is an extruded piece, and that's unusual for a 100-story building. The other problem is it's a very small site, a tight site, so we're actually using parking in the building that is mechanical parking. So we reduce as much as possible the need for ramps and space that's not totally devoted to car spaces.
Masdar HQ in Abu Dhabi, which I believe you just won the contract for or were awarded. What's the status of that one? What's special about that one?
That building we actually won the competition for. It's 2 years now. Almost 2 years. That was an international competition that we got invited for. We won. It's for the Masdar Headquarters building at the center of the new Masdar plan, which is in Abu Dhabi. It's a zero energy, zero carbon, zero waste city. It's for the developer, so it's their headquarters. That building was designed to be 103% positive energy, and to date, as tested by the client and us, it's probably the most energy efficient building on the planet. It's a unique and very demonstrative building in terms of energy conservation and energy performance. So it has the world's largest photovoltaic array on it. It has a series of 11 cones that move air vertically through the building that bring in direct daylight into the floor plates. It's an office building with retail at the base. It's under construction. They should be pouring the first level slab as we speak. And we were there about 2 weeks ago looking at the interior fit out for the headquarters. And we've turned in the construction documents. It's now out to tender. So hopefully the contractor will be on board pretty soon and they'll keep moving.
We could talk for hours, but I'm going to sum it up, and just by making the point that the world's tallest building and building the world's tallest building after Burj Dubai just became a much greater task, and there probably aren't too many places in the world now that could aspire to having a world's tallest building, but if there is going to be a next one, that you're one of a handful of firms that can fill that order. And I just it just makes me think that kind of the world's tallest building game isn't as much fun as it used to be, just because it's going to be that title is going to change hands a lot less frequently now than it has before, which we've had a flurry of activity here lately. So a place like Dubai, I think the excitement is turning to what kind of buildings are being produced that will appear on the skyline. It's nice to see another building on the Chicago skyline, a fourth spire. What do you have to say about that whole subject?
You mean the spire itself?
Just the fact that it's really not, in a lot of places, going to be about the world's tallest anymore, because that is clearly out of reach.
Yeah.
But it's more about the kind of creations that you're going to be adding, and more about the whole skyline instead of one building.
Well, let's put it this way. The tallest building in the world title always attracts a great deal of attention. You can, as a developer, announce that you are going to do the tallest building in the world in such and such a spot, and all of the press pick it up and they print it. And so it may be that it's anticipated, or it might happen, or the developer says it's absolutely going to happen. But you know what happens is the developer gets known. He gets in print. He's on the front page of USA Today and other things, whether it gets built or not. So I think the super tall, world's tallest title, you'll continue to hear a lot about it. You'll still continue to see that it very seldom will occur. It has been, Sears Tower held the record for something like 25 years. So, and then there's been a flurry between Petronas and Taipei 101 and Burj. Burj will probably hold the title for 5 to 6 years if the Saudi stuff happens. If it doesn't happen, it's going to be that much longer. It could be a long time. It depends on the recession.
But the phrase still holds an element of magic to it, even
it does.
so.
Yeah, I think that the There's going to be a lot of new cities that are coming online, though, that are growing because of the migration to those areas. And they may not be on the regular hit list of cities that we currently think of when we think of super tall buildings. And I think that the super tall in those cities are going to play a role in terms of bringing them to the global, stage. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of newer innovations, and you might see things changing hands in terms of who's competitive and who's not, because they're going to be in the different types of countries or different kinds of cities that we currently don't really think of right now. I think that could be very interesting.
Examples of some of those places. I know we don't talk about Korea very much, but they're certainly
That's right.
getting ready.
Exactly, that's a perfect example.
They want it, yeah.
That's a
They
perfect
want it.
example.
Tell me about Korea, and we haven't heard much about them. Tell us about it.
Well, the tallest building in Korea right now is Tower Palace 3, which I did in 1997 or 98. So it's over 10 years old. It's still the tallest, and it's only 73 stories. So there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of dialogue about it, and architects have been kept busy doing schemes for quite some time, but nothing's broken ground yet that would be taller than that. To my knowledge, there may be one or two that are beginning to get serious. And I think there are 5 or 6 that are announced to be over 100 stories. But again, it's the issue of reality versus.
Yeah.
And the other places, Russia certainly is preparing to get into the game.
They have seen a setback as well, but yes.
They have those aspirations, serious aspirations.
Other countries in the Middle East outside of the UAE that you may have on your radar, you might see in the next, if we're talking about 1 or 2 a decade, if you look at the next 2 to 3 decades and look at the population migration around the world, you might see countries in Africa or other places in the Middle East come online that definitely want to have that kind of cachet.
The world's tallest title still has that appeal, and even in places where they don't necessarily need to build tall, they still will, just to get on the world stage and to make themselves known.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The central government of China could decide that they want to put Guangzhou on the map. A place that most Americans have not heard of, but is a place that has 10 million people living in it, something like that. They could come out with a 1111 meter tower, and they could build it. They have the financial resources to do it. They could fill it up with companies, and they would put Guangzhou on the map, as a new sort of Western anchor. And there are a lot of cities like that in China that are considered second tier by Shanghai and Hong Kong and Beijing standards, but are, world-class cities from the point of view of population and productivity. So, there are a lot of strategies that people have that we don't know yet, but China's a force for the future. It has inexpensive labor. It can do just about anything it wants to do. That probably will stay for the foreseeable future. After that, it's India, but India doesn't have the central power to do it.
I want to thank both of you for taking the time, because this conversation could go on a long time just because you have so many interesting things going on in your office, but thanks for being with us. Adrian Smith and Gordon Gill of Smith Gill Architecture in Chicago at the CTBUH 2009 conference.